I was just talking with Jaron from Cadillac Three.
Yes.
And I asked him, I said, hey, man, saw a picture with you, and you didn't have a shirt on. You may not have had a shirt on.
I think I did have my shirt on.
And I think,
I try not to do that too often.
yeah, I think all you guys were on a pool. And he said it was like 9 in the morning or something. You guys were on a pool having margaritas. Is that story accurate?
It is accurate. Well, I didn't get up that early, so I wasn't there at 9, but that venue, which we played a bunch, and this time when we showed up, they put a pool in, which I think is genius.
In the venue.
At the back of the venue, right outside of catering, I don't know what used to be there, but they put in a nice pool. So about 11, 12 o'clock, most everybody on the tour was out there, and oh my God. By the time the show rolled around,
that's what I asked him. That's what I said. I said,
it was a shit show, bro.
If you're starting that early, like, how do you take 4 hours to just kind of recuperate? And he was like, no.
No, we kind of rolled right into the show.
He said, and maybe it's Let It Be. Do you guys do Let It Be as an encore? Mm-hmm. He said what he remembers about Let It Be was because, they play, and then he has to come, you guys come back at the end, and he's like, sometimes my Mary. He's like, you know what? The melody was there, but the words weren't there.
It happens. Man, we had that was a great day, though. That was a lot of fun. We all got to hang out, and we've been having a blast on the tour anyway, but that was a little extra that day.
Do you guys find, now that you're touring and you're not 22, that you can, I don't know do you feel like you can relax a little more because you have success? Can you do things? Because also, if you're 22, maybe you're doing that being reckless, but now you're doing that because you kind of understand where you are. Is there a difference now as Little Big Town as when you guys were 25, 30 years old when you tour?
Yeah. I mean, I think naturally. I think we are. I don't really get nervous or any of that before a show anymore, especially just our regular live shows. We're really comfortable. We've been doing it for a dang long time now, and it's definitely changed. When you're younger, you feel like you're really just fighting all the time, like just to be somebody.
Yeah.
And especially like some of the slots you play when you're younger, it's a lot earlier. You're getting out there, and it's literally like you're fighting for their attention. So it's a little more focused. But I mean, that's never curbed our enjoyment of hanging out and having a good time. That's all part of it.
Aside from the having a good time, but let's say one of you four is not feeling good. It's not because of that. It's just a general. Because this will happen on our show. We have a similar dynamic where there's 4 or 5 of us.
Yep.
And we can pretty easily cover without anyone knowing that the person needs covered for.
Yeah.
Is that situational? Can all 4 of you guys be covered for? If you show up and able to do a little, can you guys cover without anyone really noticing?
Yeah, I mean, I will say that feels like an advantage of having more people. We've had we have only played a couple of shows without one of us.
You mean just not there at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
One, we dropped Kimberly off on the side of the road to have a baby in Phoenix, and continued on to our next stop. And then there have been a couple of times when Karen had a migraine that we had to go and play without her, which, if you think about that, it was a little different. Back then, we didn't have as many hits, so nobody really cared either way. But it is. We can spread it around. It's especially if we know a little bit in advance, we can get together and move parts around. We've gone and like, okay, I'm covering Karen's parts on this, and it's an advantage, especially in those moments when you can't help that as much, especially as we were touring. There was the year that Boondocks came out, we played 250 shows that year. That's just shows. That's not travel days. That's not TV. That's not. So you get ragged out. Your vocals. We sing a lot.
If Karen's down and I'm just going to call her, and I'm not sure what the roles are, but I feel like she sings in the more of the songs that we hear on the
Yes.
radio.
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys have a term. It's a very equal group, which is odd for me to say lead vocalist, but for the
Yeah.
sake of this, I'm going to call her that. 'Cause
Yes,
I'm not-
absolutely.
if she goes down, can Kimberly sing? Is she ready to sing all those parts? And do you have to change keys of anything?
We haven't had to go that far yet.
Really?
The couple of instances where Karen, like I said, that was early on. We didn't have the big hits that Karen has, carried. So she absolutely could. Their range is a lot different, so it would be different. I might have to end up covering some of Karen's, but yeah, you do what you got to. But yeah, she could totally do that.
So, and I want to get to some of your live stuff in a minute, but I was just looking at the new single, which you're the guy. You're the main. Aren't you the lead vocalist on
That's
this?
Philip on Hell Yeah.
Okay, I knew it was a dude, and I don't. And
Philip's got the big husky, thick, sounds like he smoked a pack of cigarettes voice. I'm a little more in Karen's mid-range. I kind of bridge the gap between the bottom part and Karen's middle
yeah, you're
part.
talking too smart for me at this point.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're.
Inside baseball.
Well, I mean, I can act like I know about that, but I don't. Let's play, Mike. Can we play a little bit of the new song here?
Going through hell, yeah. Going through hell, yeah. You've moved on and I'm still here in hell, yeah.
Well, conscious decision to put Philip as the lead on that song and then make it a single, or does the whole package come together and then you decide?
The song came together first. It was we always try to approach the songs who it fits best, who tells the story the best. So that's kind of how that came about, him singing it, and then later on it became the single choice.
Whenever you write that, because you wrote that with Tyler Hubbard from FGL and
Corey Crowder.
Okay, so you write the song. Are you writing it as a Little Big Town song? And then two, is Philip singing the song on like the demo, or was it later Philip what's that?
So actually, when we wrote that song that day, I think actually Corey sang the demo for it. That's just kind of the way it went down when we were hanging out writing it. And it was, I think anytime you get in the room with people that are writing with you, most of the time you're trying to aim for something for yourself. And I do feel like that was the intention that day, to write a song for us. We had also at one point talked about maybe one of them jumping in on it, but that kind of, the time we wrote that song, actually probably almost 3 years ago now.
Was that pre-pandemic or in pandemic?
That was pre-pandemic.
Really?
Yeah.
And I guess you had to sit on a lot of. It was probably a strategy you had to decide. Do we just hold on stuff that we're really passionate about because we don't know what's going on, or do we put stuff out that's real good because maybe it'll cut through and nothing? I mean, that's a kind of a decision everybody creative had to make.
Yeah. Actually, though, how that kind of worked out is that we cut so many songs for that last record. We actually cut this song for that record, and didn't really feel like it fit. So that's the kind of thing that when we came back around for this record and we were starting to try to find the sequencing and which songs were going to actually make the record, that one kind of popped back up again because we always loved it and thought it sounded like a hit. And that hook, that was Corey's hook idea, and I just thought it was brilliant twist on it. So we always loved it, and then it just kind of came back around again.
One of the things for me that I prioritized, and at times I get judged for it, is that if it's a Saturday and I'm shooting a TV show, we shot my whole Nat Geo show on Saturdays, and I always, almost Beyonce-like, had to watch the Razorback games. And there were a couple times they couldn't make it happen because we're shooting in this one specific location at a time we can only get this person, but I still had it up. Like, it just was a non-negotiable for me. Yes. And there are only a couple non-negotiables in my life, period. And it's, if there's a Razorback game on, football game on Saturday, I have to watch it. And so from what I hear is that you're also not an Arkansas fan, but a big Alabama fan. Same way with you?
I'm not a diva about anything really, except on Saturdays. If I wake up and my bus doesn't have Wi-Fi or a signal to the satellite, I'm like, I'm sorry, you're going to have to move the bus. And it's non-negotiable.
Yeah.
I'm like...
And it's known about you beforehand.
Yeah.
It's just a known.
That's always
yes.
what I end up saying. I was like, we kind of know this. I try to not be too much, but yeah, I definitely, and you'll look back at when we're at sound check, if a game is on, my iPad is right there.
I mean, I
love it.
I've done shows before, like a comedy show, and then I'm on, but the game is going later. Then I will send out the tour manager to the opener who's playing and go, hey, can you play another 25? Because and
Nice.
not only that, he'll pay you double, and I'll make sure they know that.
I haven't pulled that one yet.
And but you have 3 other people. But there have been times more. And we had a meet and greet last year at a festival I put on in Austin, and they understood. I was getting tweets from people going, "Hey, I know you're not coming out at this meet and greet for at least another 20 minutes because the game is still on." So when that,
I love it.
When that happened, and it's not me being a douche for no reason. Everyone just knows, right? It's understood, so it doesn't.
Yeah.
No
I
one's
don't ask for
surprised.
much.
Yeah.
Just give me my football games.
What was that like for you as a kid? I assume that was somehow instilled into you that Alabama football was a big part of your life.
It's so huge. And I'll say, we have Arkansas fans in our family that are just the same as you. They love Arkansas. I love Arkansas too, unless they're playing us. But yeah. In my house, I have so many memories of watching games with my dad and my brother, who's quite a bit older than I am, but it was a big deal in our house, and we watch games, and it's loud, and there's emotional hugs and jumping up and running around the house. And
Did you?
It's fun though, man.
Oh,
It comes from such a good place.
I wonder. Hey, Reed, can you stretch his mic out just a little
I'm
bit?
sorry,
you
my
don't have to lean. No,
sitting
we
too-
can
no,
even need to scoot it up.
I'm good. I'll scoot up.
I wonder. You talk about it was such a family thing. Do you think? And I can give you my story too. But why is it so important? Is it because that was such a bonding thing between you and your dad, like, and maybe that is still there for you? Because mine is, I didn't have a family for a lot of my life, but the one consistent thing that was there for me, always on a Saturday or on a Tuesday, or if the basketball team, that was always there.
Yeah.
That was something I could attach myself to, have a bit of an identity, and it was always there. And I could understand it being how I felt, or I could also understand if someone's dad loved it so much that even if you don't think it, and like, I just love it because my dad, maybe that's a reason you felt it early and you've held on to it.
Oh yeah, I think definitely all of that. It felt like tradition in a way. I'm a super sentimental guy. I attach to things like that in that way. So I'm sure that plays a big part of it. And then just my love for college football, which is changing in some ways a little bit. I understand it and I'm for it, but the heart of college football, what I feel like the kids are playing for, that pride that you can only get kind of in that arena of college football. I love. It just feels a little deeper, But I love all sports, all professional, all of it. I just like sports in general.
Your dad, your brother, you mentioned that your brother, older, younger? Was he older, younger?
He's older.
He's
25 years older than I am.
Wow, he's a lot.
I don't know if that's the exact number, but yes, right, yeah.
Were you the last kid?
I'm the baby of 6, and the closest sibling to me was 10 years.
Wow.
I only lived with one of my siblings.
So you know them as obviously brothers and sisters, but not like a traditional, we live down the hall brother and sister.
Well, exactly, and not in that way, but we're all super close. We grew up in a little town, a couple thousand people there. They were all there, except for my brother, who was in Arkansas until he was in his 30s and then moved to Alabama. So yeah, I didn't have that kind of relationship with him, but I grew up with their kids. So there was kind of almost parental to, like, especially my older sister Sandy. I stayed with her a lot.
Were you ever
Her
an uncle to
daughter.
somebody older than you?
I am an uncle to someone 7 months younger than I am.
That's funny.
She lives in Arkansas, in Cabot.
I mean, that sounds like some Arkansas stuff there, though, too. The name of your town that you grew up in was what?
Summiton.
And-
Sumiton.
What's Summiton known for?
It was a coal mining town back in the day. A lot of my family from my dad's side of the family were coal miners. Had some tragedies in our family because of the coal mines. So it was a coal mining community. Of course, that kind of died off. It's just a little wide spot in the road between Birmingham on your way to Memphis, you know.
Similar, I'm from a town called Mountain Pine, Arkansas, where we were a sawmill town. And the whole town was built on the sawmill.
Yeah.
And everywhere you went, you know, there were people, and this isn't funny or sad, but there were just people with missing arms and hands and fingers and from the sawmill.
That's part of it.
Yes. And I just remember it not being sad, but I'd be like, oh, Jimmy doesn't have a left arm because he had worked at the mill for all of his life.
Yeah.
But when that mill went away in a town that was already impoverished, it's really rough in my hometown now because there's just, you don't go there now for any reason. When the mill was there, people would move there to work at the mill.
Right.
But there's no reason to move to Mountain Pine anymore.
Right.
And so when you've had this economic hub for so long and then you don't, that can really cripple a town. With the coal mine being gone, is that sort of what happened to your town, or did they find a new?
You know, when I was growing up, of course, it wasn't a thing. I mean, there was still a couple of coal mines and that were functioning at that time, but it had kind of gotten away from around being centered around that. I remember I felt like it was thriving when I was a kid. It has changed a lot now. I think a lot of people have moved towards Birmingham a little more, and but they've really seen kind of a resurgence here in the past year or two, where I feel like it's coming back around closer to what it used to be when I was there. But it has changed a lot. And my family's been there a long time.
Still,
Yeah. I mean, I live on Westbrook Street.
That's funny.
My family always lived there. You know, they were all there.
Do you feel like you juggle or have to balance the life of, we'll call it Rockstar life and dad life? Can that be the same? Or is it you kind of have to check into a character at some point of one of the, how do you do that?
It is a balance. And I think as my son gets a little older, it's a little different. But I mean, you know, I'm pretty much the same guy on and off. I'm still goofy dad. That's, you know.
Is that what he would say about you? You're goofy dad? Yeah. Loving,
You know, you're
loving goofy.
Oh yeah. Like silly. I'm just a silly kid.
With your job, which is abnormal, as both of ours are in our own individual ways, in a couple of ways. One, you are very front facing. You're in the public eye. You are receiving praise. You're receiving criticism from people you do not know. What are those conversations like with a kid? Because your son's getting older now. It's crazy to watch him grow.
Yeah, I know, and he is becoming more aware of things like that. You know, we're just not a big deal, so he does. It's not. I mean, I know I will say this: like in the past couple of years, I think he's become a lot more aware of. I don't want to say the competition, but kind of, you know, like the funny thing that I think about is like he a couple of years ago was watching an award show and we lost, and he was so mad at Old Dominion. He was so mad. I got home and he was like, I hate those guys. I was like, buddy, it's not a big deal. We're okay. We've won the awards. We're good.
When you were his age, talk about you and what. And again, how old is he now?
He's 12.
Holy crap!
Just
he's getting so
it's
big.
crazy.
Yeah.
And he looks like he's older than that. So
you're 12. Where are you at 12? What do you want to be? What's
Ugh.
happening with what's going on?
The complete difference between his 12-year-old and mine is just, it blows my mind. And it's a little bit of I'm trying to wrap my head around it because it is so different. But I was not nearly as smart as he is or aware of the world, everything that goes on. I was a very sheltered, I lived in my little town, and it's a very conservative community that is really, my whole existence growing up revolved around my church. There's 2,000 people in my town, and 1,000 of them went to the church I went to. So you're kind of in this little fishbowl. My family is very conservative, so it was. I had a way different life, and like I said, when I think back to myself at that age, I was not nearly aware of life in general as my kid is.
What about dream-wise? Like, you're 12. What do you want to be when you grow up?
I wrote my first song when I was 12, and I sang my first solo when I was 12. That began my love affair with music.
Where did you find that you could do music? Was it in church?
It was in church. Yeah, definitely.
So was it a lot of hymns? Did you have a church? Because I went to a Southern Baptist church, but we still had incorporated some newish school stuff. It wasn't all old school hymns, like a lot.
Yeah, no, the amazing thing, and I think the reason I love music so much, because my church had a youth choir of about 200 kids, and we would take summer trips, travel, go and sing all over the country. So that's really where I cut my teeth and fell in love with music. But my church had full horn section, multiple guitars, drum. It was a big production, the music part of it. We had really super talented people at our church, instrumentally, vocally, everything.
Wow,
it was a big
how great
deal
to see that, right?
Yeah. It absolutely set me on the path of, I remember sitting with my choir director and just dreaming about being on stage and singing. I knew that's what I wanted to do from the first time I sang a solo.
Your parents at all musical? Your dad musical? Brother?
My mom sings. Her whole family is super musical. We would go to family reunions, and they would break out the amps and the keyboards. And my Uncle Jim was a fantastic piano player. My dad could sing. He wasn't really his side of the family wasn't really big into music. Not as much as my mom's side, but
so you're 12.
Everyone around me sang. My sister sang.
Yeah, at church. Everybody. I mean, you get to see with your own eyes examples of people playing instruments. And,
yeah.
And the church that we go to down here, they're really, really good. It's unbelievable to me. They're like as good as the people that come in the studio sometimes.
Yeah, right.
And so I would imagine being a kid and seeing this, it allows you to know that can be attained.
Yeah.
Just that, even to see that would be great for a small town kid. I just assume and feel like we grew up in a similar place, and there's not a lot that you're exposed to being in a small town.
Yeah.
So to be musical and see that around you, I think would be just so fantastic. But you go and you talk to your choir director and you say, hey, I want to do music. How long until you actually get to do something in the church where people see you as you, like solo or play or something?
It was, I think it was in those early instances of me stepping out for the first time with the choir, taking solos. You know, we had big musical productions that we did for Christmas, and I would have featured parts that I felt like I was being seen for the first time in a way, you know.
Were you advanced as a kid? Were you an advanced singer and that you kind of had control of it before a lot of other kids did?
Yeah, I did. It felt very natural to me, and I felt like I could connect with people when I sang. That was what really attracted me.
What do you mean by that? You could connect with people. You're 14. How are you connecting?
Well, I think I know, and this is all, of course, hindsight, but I think back and I think that I saw when I sang, people were moved by it. You know, whatever I felt like that was, I was like, oh, I think this matters, and I think that's what attracted me to it. Just seeing how people connected with me when I was doing something like that.
So you sing at church, but when did you go, this is what I want to do for pay my rent, eat my food? It's because it's a different commitment.
Yeah, and I feel like most of the time it was always just showing up at anything that I could do, like whether it was singing at a wedding or a funeral or wherever. That's really probably the first money I made singing at weddings. And but I never really did anything that made any kind of money at that time. I knew that I wanted to be in music in some way. I had no idea what that was going to look like. I think probably at first I figured it would be in the church realm. I sang in gospel groups at some points.
Did you listen to secular music at all when you were?
I did, but I'm a lot later on some of the classic music that I love now. I was a lot later coming into those kinds of things.
So you were
really, and I didn't really get into, I listened to my main exposure to different kinds of music was because of my siblings and my mom and dad. There was this box of records in one of our closets that had Stevie Wonder, it had Elton John, it had Dallas Davidson Christian music. There was Alabama records. There was this eclectic box of music that I would put on the 45s or whatever and listen to, that really kind of exposed me to other things. But a lot of times it was Christian music or country music, whatever 8 tracks my parents were listening to. Don Williams is a big memory for me of country music at that time. But I did sing and listen to a lot of gospel music, and I listened to country music, but there was a period of time kind of in my late teens that I didn't. So there's like a span of country era that I really didn't. I kind of lost out on it, but just because I kind of found other stuff, I was really into rock stuff,
It's funny you mentioned like the gap, because I was raised hardcore on country music and even some of the gospel stuff because my grandmother raised me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so she had a lot of pride in people from Arkansas, so it was obviously Johnny Cash, a lot, and then the gospel stuff. Andy Griffith, which is odd because I knew him as a singer before I knew him as Andy Griffith Show.
Wow,
yeah,
that's cool.
But there was a time, because growing up, for me in the 90s when Napster came out and digital music was allowed, and I missed on like that late, I guess it'd be more like 2001 to like 2008.
Mm-hmm.
That's an empty period for me to I know it now because, one, I know a lot of people that made music then, and I just kind of recheck in.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a big gap for me there. I remember once I was watching, wonder what show it was, and you guys were on doing maybe Tornado. It was, I'm going to come back to it. But you guys were on, and I was like, oh, look at these four fine-looking folks here. They seem nice. And because Tornado was that one of the early ones? Early-ish?
That was
second hit?
That was the
big hit? Maybe it was.
Yes. We had 2 hits. There's some big gaps in we had Boondocks was 2005. Bring It On Home, 2006. And then we didn't have another radio hit until 2010, which was Little White Church. And then the Tornado record was after that. So that was Pontoon was on that record. And, of course, that was the biggest.
And maybe it was that. Maybe it was the record. But it was my first exposure to you guys.
Yeah, and we probably gained the biggest audience that we had ever had at that point with that record.
It's Crook and Chase. It was the Crook and Chase TV show. Now that I remember.
Wow.
It was yes. I saw you guys on the Crook and Chase TV show, and because I always loved Crook and Chase. I would listen on the radio as a kid, and I would just check back in occasionally, and I saw you guys, and I thought, wow, look at they're all 4 good looking. What kind of group is this? Where's the ugly one? I remember thinking, there's got to be at least one ugly one they hide somewhere, and that wasn't the case. And then then is about when I rechecked back in, just a couple years before I came to Nashville. I was kind of dialed back in, but it's funny. I've never thought about the gap before until you
Yeah.
said that.
Mine was in the 90s when it was the biggest heyday of country music. I mean, I knew of those artists at that time,
Right.
surface level, but I wasn't really listening to it a lot then. It was more rock and
Yeah, when it was hip hop and
grunge.
alternative. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
You know?
Like the Joe Nichols-ish era, the beginning of that. I don't know it. I know all
Yeah.
the songs now,
Yeah, right.
but I don't, Broken Heartsville, didn't know it when it was live. Listen to it now. When did you move to Nashville? What age?
I moved in 99 when we started.
You mean,
Did I say we?
You said we.
moved. Well, because I moved with a buddy.
okay.
I didn't even know I said that, but yes, I moved in 99. So we had been, I was working in Birmingham.
Doing?
I was making copies. I was a copy guy. I had actually started on the night shift. I worked the third shift, night shift, at this little company in downtown Birmingham, and then kind of worked my way up to sales rep, where I had actual lawyer clients and that I serviced for their legal documents and such. But I had done that for a couple of years, and I was like, I've got to get back to music.
I mean, it sounds like 99, though. You were in your early 20s. And so, and you had pursued a profession, even though it wasn't there fulfillment-wise, you'd pursued a professional job.
Yeah, I was paying off bills from prior musical failures.
Were you still
I'd put it all on credit cards, so I had to pay it off.
Were you still singing?
A little here and there, but not a lot. In fact, the girl I was dating at the time and had been dating for a long time had no idea I could sing. And that's all I'd done prior to that time in my life. But there was a couple of years where I was paying off credit card bills and working, didn't really know what I was going to do, and worked my way up in this job. And I decided internally, I didn't even really tell anybody that I was like, I've got to get back in music. I knew a guy that had just moved to Nashville who was cousins with Chuck Cannon. I don't know if you know Chuck Cannon. He's a incredible songwriter that had some really huge hits back in the day. I Love the Way You Love Me. He wrote that.
I
was
love the way you love me.
Yeah. He heard one of my Christian songs that I had written and wanted to talk to me. And that kind of, I was like, oh, wow. And I went to his house, and he had just won Song of the Year. I mean, I couldn't believe that he had taken an interest in something that I'd written. We had a conversation. It was terrible. I had no idea what I was doing. But he was very kind. But that kind of sparked something in me that I was like, I've got to get back to singing again. So I decided, and probably 2 weeks after that I had mentally thought, okay, I'm done. I've got to figure out a way to move on. Karen called me and said, hey, what are you doing? I was like, well, I'm working in Birmingham, but I just started doing some demos, and I want to move to Nashville.
Why would she call you? How does she know you?
We knew each other from when she was in the Christian group she was in. I knew of her in that. I filled in. This is crazy. I filled in a few weeks in this Christian group. One of their members quit, and I filled in for maybe a couple of months. And Karen was on that tour opening up with the duet that she was in Christian music. So I met her then. And then, so this was years after that.
Did you guys ever have conversations, though, about doing a collective or getting to
No.
Nashville even individually? Or
No, we didn't really know each other that well. I mean, we would chit chat, hey, passing each other, but didn't really know each other that well. So there was a college group that I had sang in. One of the guys that was in that was in Nashville and was friends with Karen, and she was talking about doing this group with Kimberly, and that they felt like they wanted to have some male voices. And Neil that's our friend, actually said, hey, why don't you see what Jimmy's doing? He's a really good singer, and you should check out and see what he's doing. So he kind of prompted her to call me. And so when she called, that's when I was like, wow, I actually kind of want to go to Nashville. She was like, well, come up and hang out with me and Kimberly and meet her and see what you think about this. And that's kind of how that all started. And the crazy weird thing is, like, still told nobody at my work that I had that conversation or anything. And about 3 or 4 weeks later, they offered me a transfer to Nashville.
Wow.
To open up a new branch.
Did you
of
do
this
that?
company. I did.
So you could
So
have
that's what me and my buddy that worked at that place at the time moved here and opened up this copy place.
which you still work at,
And
which is really
which-
cool. Yeah, he's still there every day, Monday through Friday.
I'm there.
So, what struck me when you were talking is that you obviously love music. You love to sing. You spend a lot of time doing it. But there for a while, you just quit. What was the moment where you went, all right, either this isn't going to work out or I can't do it anymore? Because that is big to go, I just got to stop for a minute.
Yeah, I don't think it was that. It wasn't that conscious. I wasn't that conscious of that move. That I wasn't saying.
You never even sang for your girlfriend.
No.
So you could
Isn't that
say,
weird?
it was a slow move, but that's drastic.
It is, but it was just, it's a matter of doing what you got to do. And I was so under student loans and all these credit card bills that I'd piled up in a band in college. I was going under financially. I had no way to pay that. And so I just had to get a real job.
So maybe it was less of you being like, screw it, I'm getting out of here, going to a real job, and more of, I'm going to have to do the practical thing and pay off these bills, and
Yes.
eventually I can get back
Yes.
to it.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay, that makes my heart feel better about
Yeah.
it. You didn't just give
Yes.
up and be like,
No,
suck it, music.
No. It was that was a period in my life where I just had to figure out how to pay my bills, and which, that happened again many times after that. But just trying to figure it out and survive.
You come up, you hang out with Kimberly and Karen. There is no Philip yet.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't even born yet in the Little Big Town Eyes. So what's the vision? Because obviously they have some sort of vision for the group, or the two of them with guy voices. When
Mm-hmm.
you get up here, what's the vision as described to you, and was it appealing to you at first?
It was all harmony based. At that time, we weren't sure that there was going to be a fourth. We, the three of us sang together. I remember many nights sitting in Kimberly's living room and working up songs, but it wasn't long after I came into the whole process that it was a discussion that we were having. Like, do we add one more voice for versatility? And actually, there was a producer in town that was showing interest in what the three of us were talking about doing. And he kind of solidified that, hey, maybe you should think about one more voice that gives you the possibility of one person singing, and then you have a triad behind them. It gives you a lot of versatility. And that was about the time that we were like, okay, yeah, I think that's the right way to go. And there was a friend of Karen's that introduced us to Philip at that time.
I mean, for me, if I'm going through this and we're like, okay, we have three, we're going to add another, but that's another.
We weren't even thinking about money, man. We didn't know that could even happen.
But it's like eventually, because again,
Yeah.
I didn't make money for 15 years, so I know what it's like to struggle. But in my mind, I'm like, eventually, I'm going to make money. Like, I'm going to hang in there. I'm going to get better at it. But 4 people
Yeah.
splitting it, that is
it's a bigger deal.
that's a bigger deal. Did you guys audition people? Did you have people sing and not like an informal audition? Was that kind of the plan early?
The three of us sang with Joe Don. That's the only person I sang with in the auditioning process. I think Kimberly and Karen actually did sing with Gary at one point.
he
But
didn't have the chops. I knew it. I figured Lavox doesn't have the chops.
yeah, that. But it wasn't long. It wasn't probably a couple months later. I met Philip. I came up, drove up, and met him at a restaurant and hung out. And we figured out that felt like the right blend. When we all sang together, it felt right. And from that point on, it was going to go that way.
When did you, not a year, but from that point where you meet Philip, when did you have to create the LLC or that now it's an entity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we aren't just friends that are singing, making $40 for 4 of us to split. We're now going to pursue this, and if we're going to pursue it, it's got to exist. So when did that happen?
It was right around that same time.
You
I mean,
committed
it
then.
all happened like from the time that I said I was going to do this to the time that was maybe at the end of 98 when we were having these conversations. I moved in February of 99. We were a 4-person group, all the 4 existing members, and just a few months later had a record deal. So that was all super fast.
Getting the record deal.
I moved here in February, and we started. I remember I had just opened up that branch of that company, and I was already going, "Hey, I'm not going to be able to come. We were going to go sing for some labels and that kind of thing." They were super. I was really upfront about all that when I moved. I'm like, I have this intention, so you're probably going to run into this issue with me. And so when it happened, they were...
It's like Alabama football. I have an intention to watch the game. You're going to run into this issue. If the bus isn't parked where I can get signal.
Thinking ahead.
Yes. That's pretty quick to get a record deal.
Yeah. I mean, we sang for 6 labels. We took one guitar. I didn't even really play guitar at that time. Took it in and sang live in front of all the record execs. And we got about 5 offers out of the 6.
Jeez. So if I'm you, I'm going, well, we're one step away from fame and fortune.
Oh, it's on.
Yeah. When did you realize that that's not quite how it works?
Well, we got our record deal. In fact, the night we signed with Mercury Records, which lasted about 4 months maybe, we got a spot at the Opry to play. We only knew 3 songs. We played all of them. And then they immediately whisked us away in a limo to the airport to go sing at the De La Hoya fight for the national anthem. And when we were getting picked up in limos at the airport in Vegas, I was like, oh, this is on. And then we lost we walked away from that. It was a handshake, walk away, not many months after that. So it was quickly like, oh, this is not going how I thought it was going to go.
Well, I'm going to ask you, and I'll have you expand on both of these, but the harshest reality once you get a deal, and then, but then actually kind of the greatest fairy tale that, because you've been able to experience both. I'll say that you guys are, in my mind, if I'm just speaking of my thoughts and feelings here, which is often what I do, like you guys have really worked. Everybody works hard. You guys have worked hard, and you've had a boom, big song. I like what you guys do, though. You try to push in different directions. Yeah. And at all times, people aren't always receptive of new things. And I always admired that you guys continued to try that regardless. Yeah. And so you say there's a gap, but in my mind, I'm like, yeah, probably a gap because people didn't understand what you guys were trying at the time, right? Right. Like, that's how I interpret. You're not saying it, that's how I'm interpreting it. Yeah. Because I've been able to experience a lot of it, not beside you, but running in a parallel path. Yeah. So when I say harshest reality, biggest fairy tale, you've got to have them both. Let's start with the harshest reality of what it is that you do and what you've had to experience.
Well, I mean, I think I immediately go to the time when I was just telling you that the Mercury deal started going awry.
How'd you know it was going awry? Did you feel it? Did something?
It was made we were made aware that it was, without going into too much of the backside of all that, we basically signed at Mercury, cut a few sides, and when the powers that be at that time at Mercury heard the sides that we did, we cut about 4 songs. They basically said, hey, if any of this is who you are, we're not interested.
Oh, really? They were not interested. Yeah.
And so the harshest reality was, I think in that moment, I remember them saying all of that, and basically felt like we had an ultimatum. So I just remember going to the parking lot after that conversation, and all of the 4 of us sitting in a car, shell shocked, I mean, we just signed our deal. We had did, the De La Hoya fight. And then all of a sudden now that's about to be yanked out from under us. We're about to lose our record deal. But I'll tell you this, in that moment, and I think that was a pivotal moment for the band as far as what you're talking about of pushing and following our gut and our heart and where we musically want to go. We had that decision to make that day. And it was the hardest decision probably, well, I know at that time that we've made. It was incredibly difficult because we were sitting there having to ask ourselves, is any part of what we just presented them us? And it was. Some of the production might not have been quite the right direction, but we're still experimenting, trying to figure out who we are. But the harmony structures and all of that of what we presented was us. So we made the decision ourselves that we were going to walk away from it, because if they're telling us that they don't want any of that, then we can't stay here. That's not going to be true to ourselves.
That's a tough decision.
But it also set the ground work for who we became as a band, as far as living and dying by our own decisions.
Now, when I mentioned on the other side of that, like it's so great, it's weird. Like you're like, wow, this is going so wonderfully that it feels like it's the dream. Because I'm lucky enough to get those moments too. I mean, where you're just like, I can't believe it's happening.
I feel like I have so many of those moments, but it's always, to me, the unexpected, unbelievable moments like collaborations that you do with people, or the being asked to be an Opry member. It's the things that you didn't even take the time to dream up because you're like, oh, I didn't know that was possible. It's kind of all of those moments of, singing on a John Mellencamp record. Like we ended up doing 9 songs on one of his records as the vocals for his thing. It's those kinds of moments that you get to share the stage with people that you're just like, I'm from Summerton. How am I standing up here on this stage with this person? And those are the moments that I'm so grateful for, and that you can't plan, that they just kind of work themselves out and happen. And you just walk away going, man, what an incredible blessing this has all been.
We had a guy call our show probably a month or so ago. His name's Gary from Wisconsin. And Gary said that he had been to over 75 Little Big Town shows.
I know Gary.
Yeah, I saw a picture that Gary had posted because we were talking with him about it. And he said he'll drive 5 hours. His first show was in Las Vegas. I ask you this in a loving, extremely respectful way. Why would someone come to 75 Little Big Town shows?
Our fans are incredible. It's a country music fan, man. They buy in, and I think it's more than just the music. They buy into who you are, or at least who they feel like you are. Your story, and I think that's been the big thing with that. But yeah, man, I think about that too. I'm like, man, sometimes I don't want to get up here either just to do it. You get tired or whatever. But man, that's our fans. They are incredible.
Yeah, you guys have very passionate fans.
Yeah, it's incredible.
The Bandwagon Tour, Miranda, Little Big Town, with special guests at Cadillac 3, littlebigtown.com if you want to get tickets. Are you still enjoying playing shows? I mean, is it still there? Is it
Having a blast. I love it.
When-
I love all of it still, and I think that's something that I kind of look at all the time. Like when we're in the studio, like, man, I still love this as much. I'm still as passionate about all the different parts of this business that we're in. That I just love it. Being out with Miranda, there's nothing better than this tour right now. I think for all of us, just showing up and the friendship. And, it's like we're talking about hanging out at the pool at noon. A lot of tours you go on, it's not like that. But we have some really great friends, and this has been a blast, and I absolutely can't wait to get up there and play.
And we'll wrap with this, but the end, I still think Little White Church holds up with any song
I love
ever.
that
I
song.
mean, I play it all the time. I don't like a dance party, and it just feels good. It's upbeat. It's the end of that, which is probably my favorite thing that you guys do when you're all. It almost feels a bit Doobie Brothers ish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the vocal realms.
Yeah. I want to hear some funky Dixieland.
Right.
That's the feeling of that when I hear that. I like that a lot. What is just your part by itself in the round with nobody else?
On Little White Church.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of how that ends.
Mike, would you mind playing for him the song he sang 13,000 times?
Is there a round on the end of Little White Church? Are you talking about Boondocks?
I'm thinking about Boondocks.
You're thinking
That's
about
exactly.
Boondocks.
I'm confused. I'm
Okay, yeah.
I'm confused.
No
I played
no
Little White
worries.
Church this morning.
No
the dance
worries.
party recording it. It's Boondocks.
So
Thank you.
It's
Go ahead.
hard to do.
Well, now you're stuck again. You're stuck on both. Okay.
Because Philip starts off the round and he goes, "You get a line."
Okay, I'll do that for you.
Okay, you go.
You get a line, I get a pole. We'll go fishing in the cravat hole. 5-cup poker on Saturday night, church on Sunday morning. You get a line, I get a pole. We'll go fishing in the cravat. Okay.
I come in on the "you get a line."
Yeah. I thought it'd be a little more dynamic than that. I'll be honest with you.
One part is never dynamic.
Well, listen,
I thought about that. What if I just showed up? Sometimes somebody asked me to sing, and I stepped up and I only sang the background vocals.
hilarious, and please record it because that's the content I like.
They're like, "Hey, why don't you play one of your songs at y'all?" And I only sing.
Yeah, they're like, "Hey, Jimmy, do
stuff.
Girl Crush," and you're like,
and I lay off the entire verse, and then I'm taste her lips, taste like you. Wouldn't that be great?
That would be TikTok viral for sure. Follow Jimmy at Jimi Westbrook on Instagram, Jimi, and at Little Big Town. And the new single, I don't say the name of the new single because I don't curse. So I will say, here's the song by Little Big Town, but I will never say the name of it.
Hell yeah, man.
So there you have it.
Wow, I'm impressed you don't cuss.
I haven't in
shouldn't.
5 or 6 years. Well, I didn't do it because I'm a good person. I did it because writing, if I'm writing stand-up, I don't curse in my stand-up. Writing kids' books, I won't allow myself to curse there. So I just said I don't need to use it all the time because I'll crutch it.
I think that's fantastic. I hear so much music right now that I'm like, there are a lot more words to choose. And I know we have some words in ours, but yeah, it's a crutch for some.
I like to hear it. I just don't like to say it. I like hearing it. I didn't hear a lot of it.
I don't like to hear it because it pops up on my kids' playlist, and I'm like, bro, you can't be listening to that.
Well, Jimmy, it's been a pleasure. Thank
Good
you very
talking to
much
you,
for
man.
coming by. We just did basically an
having me.
hour here, and you and I have just not been able to. By the way, it's the last piece.
Yeah,
Over the past 5 years,
I know.
individually, you were the last part
I
of the
haven't
puzzle.
gotten to talk to you like this. I appreciate it.
So, all right.
Good
Well,
talking to you, man.
I got a bath running. We'll hop over. And do some, all right, Jimmy Westbrook. All right, bye, everybody.